Welcome back to the Audible Angle. We got Herbs in the glasses, Dilly in the hat, Druzy just nodding his head. You can identify him as the third guy, the other guy that you don't recognize. We are trying to pump out the content this week. Busy week. I think today, this will be the Thursday show. College football with the old make you wait forever to get the playoffs started, and now let's rapid fire some games on Thursday and Friday here. So we're going to get our thoughts on last week officially on the record. And folks, if you don't realize, you can always go back and watch old episodes. Don't forget to subscribe, of course, and hit all the other buttons. Whatever other people tell you to do on podcasts, do that on ours too. We're not as familiar with the lingo, but, go back and listen to it. A big part of this is getting all of this on record. And we're going to start in hot on the Thursday matchup. And regular viewers might recall the edict to take out an irresponsibly sized loan and put it on the Miami Hurricanes plus 9.5. And folks, we're happy to report, we did have one commenter report that they did, I'm pretty sure it's a female actually, take the betting advice, and hopefully she was serious, including the 401k empty out on Indiana. So, shout out to that nice lady. Hopefully she wasn't joking. But Miami Hurricanes, minus 3.5. I like to say traveling to Ole Miss. I know these are neutral site games, but, Ole Miss is on the bottom. And the data we have right now looks like there's a little sharp action on Miami at minus 3.5. Let's start off with a little wrap on each of the games that got Miami and Ole Miss here. Druzy, you're the expert. Remember, we went through the format last time we had you on. You tried to start asking questions. That's a no-no. And you answer first. You always, jump in and answer when we ask questions. What'd you see we'll start with Miami. Was it what you expected?
Yeah, I think we talked about it a week and a half ago. I think we got a couple things right. We all picked we all picked Ohio State, but we thought that Miami getting that many points was a pretty solid bet. And I think it was just the big play was the Julian Sand interception return for a touchdown, and the repeated theme that Miami's defensive line just getting after Julian Sand. They had 5 sacks, 7 tackles for losses, that interception return for a touchdown. And that was just, those types of plays when you're in games like this, when the teams are so evenly matched, are so hard to overcome. I give Julian Sand some credit for responding in the second half. He didn't get into a groove. I didn't realize he had piled up some yardage, 287 when it was all said and done. But I think Miami, in a lot of ways, made them one-dimensional. Bo Jackson didn't run nearly as efficiently as he had in a lot of the previous games, and that just set up Miami's defense perfectly, which leads to things like the couple of interceptions that Julian Sand threw. And then, Miami just, they kind of hung on. Carson Beck didn't do a whole lot in the game, but he did make some big throws, especially in the fourth quarter when it mattered to kind of seal things. Good game. I think close game by most measures, with Miami putting it away late. And I don't think maybe a little bit of a surprise that Miami won the game, but not surprising that it was close. And Miami showed, I think, why they're here with that. They now went over Texas A&M, went over Ohio State. Got to obviously consider them legit at this point.
Hey, Irby, did you? I'm going to jump in with a question for Irby here. Do you think that, in a kind of a reverse psychology sort of way, the pounding that Ohio State took from Indiana and losing the Big Ten championship game, it kind of put them into maybe some mental acrobatics to convince themselves that game didn't really matter. It's about the playoffs. We're national championship caliber. We've been there before. Do you think that beating from Indiana carried over a little bit, either creating uncertainty, or they had to reconvince themselves of who they were so much that they lost track of who they were facing and the challenges they're going to face in the playoffs?
First and foremost, Dilly, it is hard to get Signetti out of your head. So, I mean, when he puts a beat down on you, don't even believe that it's easy to forget. So, yes. However, I think there were mental gymnastics that were needed to be done by Ohio State. And I think it's because, so I'm going to agree with you, but I'm going to give you a different reasoning. I think it's because they got punched in the mouth by Indiana and they were maybe overlooking a 10th seeded Miami, which is the wrong thing to do. And I don't think Miami's going to be taken lightly anymore. We'll talk about that later in the show. But to answer your question, and Druzy, maybe even more closer to your point, maybe we all went with Ohio State. I think we all liked the amount of points, as you state, but we also said, here's the recipe to beat Ohio State. And that recipe, Dilly, to your point, was proven out in the Big Ten game. And that's pressure Sand. He's going to make mistakes. Don't let him up. Don't give him time. And that was proven out. And I think I don't know. I'm not an insider at Ohio State like I am at 1265 here in Green Bay. But if I was, I would guess they would deny the fact that they overlooked Miami. But I will tell you, Julian Sayin looked like he was a redshirt freshman in that game. And he wasn't prepared. He'll probably be very well prepared for the next time he's on the big stage, but he wasn't. And here's the deal. Miami deserves to be in this game. They deserve to be in the semifinal game, and they proved it out. I mean, we're going to talk about the preview, but they looked like a real good team, Dilly. To answer your question, I think that was a bruised ego Buckeyes team in that game, and Miami took advantage of that momentum.
Yeah, and they're facing Ole Miss, a team that I think, especially in the first round, in our preview of their game against Tulane, in a similar way, I think we all liked Ole Miss. It's kind of a fun story for the players with all the noise around coaches leaving, and we can talk a little bit about the continued noise about which coaches are there this week, who's going to be there the week after if they win. There's a lot of questions there. But I think we all were a little hesitant, and I even brought it up at the end, don't forget about Georgia. It was hard to put them all the way over the hump, just heads up against Georgia, regardless of point spread. That was an exciting game. There was some definite back and forth. Druzy, first of all, what was you were on Ole Miss, certainly from a betting line perspective the whole time. Were there some points where you thought, well, Georgia's going to put this away now, and it was a nice run?
I did. It felt like Georgia was doing Georgia things, like they've been there before. This is certainly not their first time. Mark Richt is going to have them prepared. It felt like once Georgia got going that they were going to grind it out, play good defense, seal the win. And got to give Ole Miss a ton of credit, especially that dime that Trinidad Chambliss threw to, I think it was Harrison Wallace late in the game to set up the game-winning field goal. That was unbelievable. I was surprised when I looked at some of the stats after the game. 0 sacks for Georgia in the game, and I think Chambliss got into a rhythm, and they have some good weapons. But I do think it was a little bit of a surprise, Dilly. I think I fully expected Georgia just to grind it out and do what they've done so many times before. But Ole Miss proved them wrong. And like Irby said, when it comes to Miami, Ole Miss deserves to be there. Can't wait for this matchup against Miami.
Herbs, what did you feel during that game? Did at any point, Georgia puts 21 points on the board in the second quarter? Did you kind of think, Ole Miss had a lead, they had their chances, they weren't getting touchdowns early. Once Georgia got going, did you kind of think, well, that was a nice run. Ole Miss, stuck it in there. Good for them. Boys played hard, and we're just cruising to Georgia cover.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like that, Dilly, and I'll be honest, there's a couple of points there. I thought both teams were well prepared. I thought both teams did exactly what they wanted to throughout that game. The other thing that I loved about this game, because you had to watch it till the end, and I think most of us did, and beyond the end, to be honest, but you had to watch it to the end because in the last 6 minutes, there was easily 4 winners in that game. I mean, Georgia was winning, and I was like, yep, Georgia's got this covered. Then all of a sudden, it's Ole Miss. 2 minutes later, now Ole Miss is going to win this game. Then it comes back, and Georgia's like, we got this in the bag. And then we got Trinidad Chambliss running around 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage and flipping a 60-yarder to a wide-open wide receiver, and you're like, well, here comes Ole Miss. And then, so it was an exciting game, Dilly. It was by far of the 4-game slate, including that Thursday night game, this was by far the best. It was in the primetime spotlight. They got it right. The NCAA's got it right. But, boy, I think here's a question for both of you, actually. Did the right team win that game? I don't know. Now, I will remind you, and I think I reminded both of you in our little soiree this weekend out in the Twin Cities, there was a very blatant missed face mask on that last drive that probably gives this game to Ole Miss, and it's not a question. Ole Miss still was with the most heart, and they finished the game. But did the right team win this? Is the right team playing against Miami? And maybe in a follow-up question to that, if you think that the right team is there, would it have been a better game with Georgia against Miami?
I think the right team is there, Irby. The non-call on the face mask was certainly unfortunate. And I think the third quarter is when, I think you said it, Irby, a minute ago, I thought Georgia was just going to do their thing. The third quarter kind of got sleepy. They each punted a couple times. There were some penalties in the third quarter, and then the fourth quarter was like a fireworks show. It was outstanding. We talked about it in the previous episode. Probably very little separating these two teams. We saw that earlier in the year when they already played, and so figured it was going to be a close game. And face mask, unfortunate. Face mask aside, I'm going to say yes. The right team won, and Ole Miss deserves to be there.
I'm going to agree with that too, because as you look through the box score and the scoring thing, I like to do that to remind me of the actual flow of the game. Georgia mounted their first minor comeback early in the game after kind of starting slow, explosive second quarter, and then that point where you felt like Georgia took control again. I mean, they really came back to tie it up, and really at that point you did kind of feel that Georgia was going to be in control. That's a thing. They're the experienced team. But the fact that Ole Miss withstood two surges from Georgia, I think that proves it, that, it wasn't a fluke. They had to respond. They had to start okay. Touchdowns better than field goals, but they started okay. They withstood a storm, came back. Then they withstood another storm from Georgia and hung on for the lead. I'm not one to get too into calls like that, because then you have to go and say, well, was there any other calls that were missed or called that kept drives alive that shouldn't have been, or shut down drives that should have continued. You get into that. I think we're safe to say Ole Miss played their ass off. The second part of the question, what's a better matchup? Frankly, I feel like if Georgia would have pulled them out, we'd be saying, as just a viewer, you'd be saying, Ole Miss and Miami has a more fun uncertainty to it than Georgia Miami. I think I'd be saying, yeah, Georgia had a scare against Ole Miss. They might have a scare against Miami, but they're Georgia. They're going to pound them eventually. So I like the Ole Miss Miami matchup.
Here, and I won't apologize for it. I figured you two jokers would have that answer, but here's the real deal. And I don't know what box score, Dilly, you're looking at, but I'm going to give you the real box score here, and I'm going to give you some stats. And you tell me who wins this game, all right? There's one team that has 510 total yards versus the other team's 351. You've got one team that's got 34 first downs versus the other team's 21. You've got one team with almost 38 minutes of time of possession and the other team with 22. Who do you think wins that game? And without me telling you who it is, it's probably the first team, right? Now I'll tell you the difference. The first statistics I was giving you is the Georgia Bulldogs. They controlled this game. But, and I will tell the viewers now, we may have closet Chicago Bear fans in our midst. And I know that should hurt Dilly. Druzy, you don't care. You're probably jumping on whatever flipping bandwagon you want right now because your Vikings are no longer in the mix. So jump in what you want, but here's the difference, guys. Here's the difference. It's the splash plays. It's the big plays that if there was a stat for that, Ole Miss had more of them. And that's the point that I guess I was getting at. I was hoping you guys would have done your homework today and yesterday. Obviously, you guys were more into doing actual work today, and I apologize to the folks here at Audible Angle. Good for your bosses. But I will tell you, I think Georgia probably deserved to win that game, but Ole Miss had more significant splash plays that got them that win, particularly, Drew, in that fourth quarter when it actually mattered. So I guess you could turn the tables on me and say play better defense, Georgia, right? But when the guy is running around like crazy behind the line of scrimmage and almost going into his own end zone and then gets a 60-yard throw, and I know it's probably only 22 yards because he was 30 yards behind the goddamn line of scrimmage, but it was a 60-yard throw in the air. So I'm going to argue that maybe the best team didn't win that game, and I'll certainly Bulldog Nation is actually blowing up my phone now. I thought I was unlisted, but obviously people know how to find celebrities around here. But with that being said, guys, we've got what we have in the second round. We'll talk further about that here. But I am a firm believer that the Bulldogs, and I'm okay with you guys disagreeing, but we'll go and agree to disagree tonight because the best team that day were the Bulldogs.
Can you just for the listeners, what were those yardage stats you were referencing again?
What was Team A again?
Team A was Georgia. They had 510 total yards, and Ole Miss had 351.
Are you looking
here?
at the right game?
Looks like Trinidad Chambliss threw for 362 and Ole Miss rushed for 121.
You're looking at the first game, aren't you?
I am, you son of a guns.
Oh, we can edit that out in post. We'll edit out the whole segment. Ole Miss had 473 total yards, Georgia 343. First downs even, penalties basically even, time of possession. Georgia did have them by a couple minutes.
All right.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's a good test.
It
was on the 15-minute mark, Dilly. About the 15-minute mark.
Just erased about 3.5. Hey, you were testing us. Way to keep us on our toes. Yeah. That's planned. That was all planned by Herbs. This guy it's not his first rodeo.
I do like how you yelled at us to do our homework, though, as you were doing that. That was the best part.
It got a little personal. That's what I was like, wow.
Yeah.
CBS Sports is junk at statistics. So I brought up ESPN. I was like, wait, ESPN has the wrong stats too?
I checked my scores 3 different times during that rant to make sure I had it right.
Woo.
Nice work.
All right. Let's go ahead and wrap up this side of the bracket. Looking ahead, obviously, to the Ole Miss Miami matchup. I think I mentioned the point spread earlier, and it is going to be Ole Miss, as a 3.5-point dog, allegedly at this point in the week. And, Druzy, we'll start with you, either from a point spread perspective or straight up, obviously both. We'll take both. What do you see in this matchup? It seems the point spread tells you maybe people think, I'm a little surprised that people are completely bought in on Miami at this point.
I am too. Couldn't agree more. I expected this to be maybe more of a pick 'em, maybe 1 point. Because betting wise, I would take Ole Miss and take the 3.5 points. And in fact, I'm taking Ole Miss outright. I just think that Trinidad Chambliss, his elusiveness, his playmaking ability can offset some of that defensive prowess that Miami has. We talked about how Miami seemed to make Ohio State one-dimensional in the quarterfinal game, and I think that mattered. And one guy we did not talk about for Ole Miss that deserves a lot of credit because I think he's taken home some hardware at the end of the year is Kawan Lacey, who I admittedly knew was having a good year. I didn't know he was 1,500 yards and 23 touchdowns good. So Ole Miss can attack you from some different angles. They can run it. Harrison, Wallace, and Deshaun Stribling, great 1-2 punch for receivers. They even got a couple guys further down on the depth chart that have 500-600 yards. And I just like Trinidad Chambliss and the way he's playing right now. And let's face it, is it possible to go another week without like a Lane Kiffin in the news cycle type of a thing? This just feels like, are his assistant coaches ever going to be able to leave? There's the Charlie Weiss Jr. offensive coordinator coach. They don't know when he's going to be, going to be able to join Kiffin at LSU. I think the running backs coach, Kevin Smith. So Silent Bob is the running backs coach for Ole Miss. And we don't know when he's joining LSU, if ever. Would it be at all shocking if Ole Miss pulls this thing off and we're talking about Lane Kiffin's former team being in the national championship game? Maybe that's, I don't know, doesn't factor in other than the intangible factor, but I feel like it's there. And I just like the way Ole Miss is playing right now. Certainly wouldn't shock me if Miami won because they got some great athletes, but I'm going with Ole Miss.
What's your first take, Herbs?
Wow. Here's the deal, guys. Before all the Lane Kiffin stuff happened, I think there would have been even questions if a Lane Kiffin-led team could beat Georgia. I think there would have been a question if a Lane Kiffin team could beat Miami in the semifinals. Now, what I guess to your point, Drew, when does the bubble burst? And I'll use that term again when we talk about the top side of this bracket, and who, because I think nationally everybody else is waiting for the bubble to burst, not this guy. But my point is this: how much can that team, and it's really the players, this does give credence to college teams, how much does a coach matter? And I know I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, but at this point in the season, does it? I mean, these guys are either playing well or they're not, and the coach isn't going to make a difference. A coach in college sports is going to make a difference over the duration of those 10 weeks of the regular season, 9 or 10 weeks, right? When they play poorly in week 3, can the coach lift them up and get them to play well for the remainder of the season and into the playoffs? This team is winning. And hey, here's the deal. Charlie Weiss is probably playing himself into another position, at a higher level. He's got these guys playing well. And I am firmly believing that this is when the bubble bursts for Ole Miss. I don't know. I don't know exactly, guys, but we're got to be going on week 5 of the mess that Lane Kiffin has led here at minimum. And it's not Lane Kiffin's fault. If the athletic director and the administration at Ole Miss would have done what's right, Lane Kiffin would still be coaching this team. LSU might be kicking themselves for allowing him to do it at this point because he may win a national championship, but LSU had nothing to lose. Good. He does. Fantastic. We just got the national champion coach over here. But, Drew, I'm going to go against, I think that 3.5 is probably right. I think Miami is the better team. More importantly, guys, and I want your honest opinion here, Miami's hotter. They just are. I think that that momentum means a lot. I talk about momentum on these episodes a lot. Momentum is with Miami, and here's the difference. Here's going to be the biggest difference. Druzy, to your point, that's a damn athletic quarterback that they have in Chambly. He's a good athletic quarterback. But I think the defensive line for Miami is light years more athletic and quicker than what the Georgia defensive line was. And he's not going to be able to do the things he did in that Georgia game against Miami. And I think that proves to be the difference.
I'll say that, leading into the Georgia game, part of the narrative on liking Georgia was that, the Georgia defense for a big portion of the year wasn't what you normally expect for the Georgia defense. But then the Georgia defense was back for 3 or 4 weeks, and we reverted to believing all the way back to what we always think about Georgia defense, and maybe we thought back too far. We thought they were back too much. And what I think about is, again, I think Miami's defense is the unit that I trust the most in this matchup. It's hard because I like Ole Miss and I want to root for them, and I kind of don't know if I believe Miami. Their offense has been streaky to quiet. It's kind of their range. You know, it hasn't been great, but the Ole Miss defense isn't a powerhouse either. So I think that'll give Miami enough room. I mean, they had some drives. They moved the ball against Ohio State, they scored 3 touchdowns. They did enough to win that game. I think Ole Miss defense is going to give up enough to Miami's not dynamic, not great offense, and I think Miami's defense is going to take enough away from Ole Miss that before we started tonight, I don't even think I would have picked this, but I do think Miami pulls it out, and they have one major factor that could counteract, kind of the Lane Kiffin and the dynamic chip on the shoulders. The Miami Hurricanes have a gentleman. Gee, you stole the thunder. They have a gentleman who's essentially leading the entire university and the entire organization, heart and soul. He's taken championship, Super Bowl pedigree down to the sideline and injecting it into probably random players with or without consent. Fans, same there. And you got guys like Warren Sapp, injecting charisma into the Hurricanes. I think we got Butch. What was his name?
Butch Davis?
Yeah.
Butch Davis. He's out. He's in the concourse mainly, whispering to people. He's firing people up.
What's he calling Jimmy Johnson? He's got Jimmy on the horn.
Jimmy's on the horn. Dennis Erickson. They got so much depth of charisma that there's a term used on the show, and again, people are just holding their breath, waiting for Urban to erupt. We'll just say erupt. It could be another E word, but Signetti swagger. Think about Miami swagger. Think about the Canes. Think about the U. There's no more swagger than that.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll be honest with you, Dilly. You hit it right on the head, but I've got some questions. Everybody's seen the video of Mr. Irving on the sidelines taking the old belt off after the game, got his shirt off. I mean, he's showing us. I mean, the guy looks pretty fit. I don't know. He's got like a 13-pack. I don't know what the hell he's got underneath there. But if that's Michael Irvin not on cocaine, what did Michael Irvin on cocaine look like, man? I mean, that guy was sweating, and I don't know how warm it was in that stadium, but I'll tell you what, there was some kind of swagger, but I think he has some assistance. The Signetti swagger is all Signetti. There's no ulterior substances. That's all natural. And what was going on with Mr. Michael Irvin was not. But I got another point. I'm just coming off that, but that's a good point, Dilly. I love it. But I do want to get into with the Miami Hurricanes is the scenario of, and I lost my train of thought. Dilly, I'm going to throw it back to you. I want to pick that back up, but I want to get back on the chain because Michael Irvin's got me all kind of warm.
This is
not the only one on us.
This is new on the Audible angle. It's a timeout. Normally we just call an audible and we keep rolling. Irvin's calling it a full timeout.
Not even a 20. It's got the full.
It's a full timeout. The headsets are down. The heaters on the Packers bench aren't working. There's a lot of technical difficulties right now. I mean, we kind of wrapped this game, and we could probably filibuster for 5 minutes more on whether Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, does he count as a Hurricane celeb? He's kind of Hurricane adjacent. We might hype his career, going into a match against Roman Reigns or something, but. Okay, back to Irby.
Irby's back. All right,
I got it. Sorry about that little brain fart. But here's what I'm concerned.
To Michael Irvin all the time too.
My only concern about Miami is this, because Miami, and I'm going to look back at the Georgia game, and I'm going to go and use that same sense. But I think Georgia, there was moments in that third quarter where Georgia started feeling comfortable that they were going to win, and I think that we're going to see in the Miami Ole Miss game. And here's the only caveat that I see. is Miami is going to feel comfortable up 10, 13 points, right? And they're going to be rolling in towards the last quarter or maybe into the fourth quarter with that 13-point lead. And that comfort level and I'm hoping that the aggressiveness from Miami and what they've shown is very aggressive, will curb this. But Ole Miss is literally 3 plays away from beating you even with a 13-point game. Right, like there's so the game plan from Miami is most likely going to be the same. We'll grind this out. We'll run the football. We'll throw the 10-yard passes. It's not going to be flashy, but we will grind this game to an absolute halt. But then Ole Miss gets the ball, and then they score in like 30 seconds, and then it's like, holy shit, what just happened? So that's what I'm only concerned about, and I think we've seen that from Georgia and Ole Miss. I mean, maybe there was some regular season games from Ole Miss that we've seen that too. It's kind of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing, but that's my only concern here. But I'm liking the Miami Hurricanes.
Well, real quick, I know, Dilly, you want to put a wrap on this one ahead of the next one, so I'll make it quick. But I do agree with Herbs in this sense. What concerns me, I'm still picking Ole Miss, but Miami has followed pretty much the same game script for the last 2 games, which they've won, which is play good defense, grind everything out, especially with Mark Fletcher in the second half, and they've gotten it done that way against 2 really good teams. So, Dilly, back to your original point, Ole Miss's defense probably not as good as some of the other defenses that are still left. And so certainly a concern that if Miami gets a lead and they could just sort of grind it out and let their defense tee off on Chambliss, I mean, that's an absolute possibility in this one.
Well, we're going to do a quick flashback without derailing the whole situation here. But, you know, one of Irby's favorite NFL coaches of all time, a guy he thinks needs to be back in action as soon as possible, Mike McCarthy, led some Aaron Rodgers football teams. Even LaFleur led some with some questionable defensive coordinators in the Aaron Rodgers heyday, when one thing we try to build ourselves on fill our hearts with hope, was our offense is going to be our defense. And not like we're going to keep the ball away and do that kind of stuff. We're talking about attacking and making a team like Miami. That's a formula for Ole Miss to take control of the game, is to score enough early enough to make Miami uncomfortable, where they can't, say, well, hey, we got 3 first downs, we'll punt and put in the D and hold them again, because, holy shit, it's 17-3, and we got to start scoring here because we're getting a little uncertain on whether or not we're going to be able to hold them off, even if, it's a couple touchdowns, couple field goals. Miami, in obviously the playoff matchups, they haven't gotten into a track meet. I don't think their offense is particularly, well. This is a purposeful pause because I know the AI is going to edit it out. I don't know if they're really configured to be in a track meet against a team like Ole Miss. So, Jersey's on Ole Miss. Me and Herbs are thinking Miami, but I will open the door a little bit, which some of our viewers hate. I borderline flip-flop sometimes. I'm just saying there's an avenue, there's a game script that exists where Ole Miss applies enough pressure offensively that it takes some weight off the defense by putting the pressure on Miami to do things that they aren't typically having to do in big matchups. Before we get to Indiana, because we know we're going to get to Indiana, we got to revisit a little bit. And Druzy, it's going to be a little bit of a call out here. It cost us a game in the Picks League when we were, I believe, 9-0 at the time. It was our first loss in the big money Picks League. We squandered that awesome start, sidebar. But, you hyped up the Texas Tech defense, and we were believers. You had us believing. A lot of viewers and listeners, they actually sent us messages. They didn't want you, first time on, they didn't want the comments to, kind of bruise the ego. But we got some personal messages on, this guy talked for 7 minutes about the Texas Tech defense. Where was the talk about the Oregon defense? What did we miss on Oregon's defense?
This guy's lucky he's on the show again, isn't he?
It's evident why you guys wanted me back today, just for that 30-second rant from Dilly. Yeah, talk about a swing and a miss on this one. I would say I don't even I don't feel bad about hyping the Texas Tech defense. I still think they're pretty good. Texas Tech's offense was just completely embarrassing, which, Dilly, to your credit, you did talk about Oregon's defense is pretty legit this year. Not maybe a typical Oregon defense, but Mateo Ugalele was awesome in that game, and they just took Baron Morton completely out of the game. Not surprising that Oregon's defense played as well as they did. I expected maybe a little bit of a low-scoring game, but Texas Tech's offense was just brutal, and Oregon deserves a lot of the credit there. Texas Tech's defense allowed them to hang around probably, quite frankly, longer than they deserved to be, and Oregon was able to convert with some short fields in the second half when Texas Tech had no choice but to try to make something play. But the numbers for Texas Tech, were just brutal. I mean, Morton threw for only 130 yards or something. They couldn't run the ball either, so it was just punt after punt plus a couple of turnovers. And Dante Moore was kind of sneaky good in the game too. So it wasn't great, but he was certainly good enough. And look, Oregon's a good team. I thought it was an even matchup going in, but Texas Tech just didn't get anything going, and Oregon deserved to win that game. Yeah, and kudos to them.
That was certainly tongue-in-cheek, because as I watched the game, I mean, I could not have been, I don't think I could have been more impressed by the Texas Tech defense. It was, for a 23-point loss, it was the most amazing defensive performance I've seen, because repeatedly they were put in horrible positions by the Texas Tech offense, whether it was turnovers or just straight up ineffectiveness. So you're right. Texas Tech hung around. It was 6-0 at halftime, and I don't have the offensive stats for Texas Tech divided up by half. It doesn't matter. They're turning the ball over. Texas Tech was holding them to 3-yard drives starting at the 35, the Texas Tech 35-yard line, and turning them away. It was actually pretty impressive, which I guess to some degree you do bring up a question. Is it Oregon defense, or was Texas Tech that atrocious? I'm sure it was a little bit of both. Herbs, Oregon, did we miss the ball a little bit, or did Texas Tech just lay an egg and drop it on our face a little bit?
Well, a little bit of both, to be honest, Dilly. And I'm going to give the Audible Angle crew a little bit of credit here, and namely yourself, Dilly. You did talk about how Oregon is now finally healthy. Their quarterback was back and healthy. You said that we've got to be aware of that. We have to watch that again.
And the receivers, yep.
Yeah, everybody got healthy, and they showed it, right? But what Druzy was talking about is that the defense is solid. And I'll tell you what, Druzy, is it Martinez, the middle linebacker kid? Is that the best
for Oregon?
Yeah, no, for
Jacob Rodriguez for Texas Tech and David Bailey. They're both likely first-round picks.
Yeah, so Rodriguez got the award for the best linebacker in the country, right, from Texas Tech. Is that correct?
I think he's on the list. I don't know if they've even announced that yet, Herbs. I'd have to check, but he's right there, right?
Regardless,
yeah.
The kid is a quarterback. He played a quarterback at Virginia for his first season. In the last 3, he's now been transferred. He wanted to go play at Texas Tech, and the coach is like, I don't have room for you as a quarterback, but I'll take you as a linebacker. He changed it over. He's a stud. To your point, I think we got it right. We just got the pick wrong, right? And I think that's mostly, Dilly, based on the fact that the young players for Texas Tech on offense weren't ready for that size of a game. And Oregon was. They were battle-tested. Oregon's been there before. I think they were the better team overall. But I think it was more so of who was ready to play. And I'll give credit to the Oregon coach. He had those boys ready to play, and he had a healthy team, which makes any coach look good. So I don't think we had it completely wrong, folks. And you can roll back the tape. Hopefully you don't roll back the tape of this episode, because I made a fool of myself earlier, but we'll delete that out. But I think, Dilly, we weren't completely wrong. We got the pick wrong.
We got a couple things to edit out. My 13-second pause. I will rely a little bit on AI there, but once you get about 3 seconds into a pause, you just wait a while to make sure that there's a big enough gap that the computer automatically says that ain't right and just squeeze that right out of there. I'm going to mention something here. Dan Lanning has certainly a different kind of swag, but he's got a little swag to him too. That And I can't figure out yet if I like it. Maybe we'll see how this game plays out before I determine on whether or not I like his version of swag. Druzy, hold your horses for a second here. We're going to go out of order because I got a question for Herbs here on this Indiana. I guess we got to recap the Indiana-Alabama game. Not a ton to recap because they just blew the doors out of them, made them look like they didn't belong, like they shouldn't have been in the playoffs, which, hey, they beat Oklahoma. Maybe that makes them feel better about themselves, but they were not a contender at all, and they didn't show really anything. They didn't even really have a path to victory. The question is, did Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers, did they expend too much too early? Is that the height of it, and it's all downhill from here, and it's all over? Cignetti swag used up, bag is empty, oil can is dry, out of gas.
I feel like I honest to God feel like I'm Aaron Rodgers, and I'm going to look at you and be like, you asked that question? I mean, you and the national media completely underestimate the Hoosiers team. What else do they need to do for us as fans? What else do they need to do? Now you're asking, what you're now asking of the Hoosiers and Cignetti is, did you win by too much? Too early? Dilly, is that a thing? Is that a thing? Did you ask that of the Jaguars last week? Did you win by too much on week 18? No, you did not. This is the national media trying to poke holes in one of the most complete college football teams that the NCAA and the Football Championship Series has ever seen.
Hey, we go on the script, Herbs. I'm just going down the script and asking the questions. You asked me to set you up for a rant here, buddy. So
yeah. Well, you cut me off because here's what I'm going to tell you. Here's what happened, and what went on here was Cignetti and I had a conversation before last episode in our preview, and I said Cignetti 7 points. He just looks at me with that Cignetti swagger, and he just looks like he knew that fake was coming. And you saw it too. You saw it during the game. He knew that stuff was coming, and he said, you know what, Herbs? I'm going to give their 7 points, and I'm going to raise them 31. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to raise them 34, and we're going to win by 34. Boy, oh boy, there is nothing more that you can ask of the Hoosiers at this point. Now, are they going to be tested in the semifinals? We'll get to that game. They will be tested. They were not tested against Alabama. They absolutely were not. I've got some stats to throw at you that Cignetti has shared with me that I didn't get online. These are only insider stats we'll talk about in the preview. But boy, oh boy, I'm looking forward to that Cignetti swagger again into the final when we talk about that Oregon matchup against Indiana, which, by the way, is a rematch.
And a little interjection here. It's time for the Oregon-Indiana preview because we don't even need to hear Druzy's take on we don't need an expert to explain a near 40-point blowout. Whoop-de-doo. Thanks, Druzy, for your contribution on the Indiana-Alabama breakdown.
No problem. Since Herbs and Kurt Cignetti are best friends, I mean, I guess I default to him on this since they'll probably hop on the phone right after the episode here.
Herbs, take us into the insider polling inside the Cignetti campaign headquarters. What are you seeing on the inside polling?
Well, again, it's a disappointment from the spreadsters in Vegas. Zero credit being given to Oregon once again, being 3.5-point favorites in this game.
Indiana, you mean? Indiana. You got yourself in such a tizzy. You said
what?
Oregon.
What did I say?
You said
Oregon?
Yeah, Indiana.
3.5-point favorites, and that's a joke too, guys. Regular season, they waltzed into Eugene, Oregon, played a B-, C+ game against Oregon, and still beat them by 10. That wasn't the best version of Indiana out in Eugene. We're probably going to get the best version of Indiana here in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, if you will. I'll give the credit to everyone. So I think that this spread is a little low. I will tell you, going into this game, there's a number of things that we've got to talk about. And I think what we're questioning is maybe the offense and the defense. And I've been saying this for weeks. Indiana is a complete team, Dilly. Druzy. This is a complete team. This is the second scoring defense in the NCAAs. That's the second. They're the third scoring offense in the league. That's pretty good, right? And they've been battle tested. We talked about that last game. They've given up a total of 2 touchdowns in the last 4 games. That includes the defending national champions against Ohio State. That includes a tough Alabama team. That includes a number of good teams in that last 4. They have allowed 1 rushing touchdown in the last 9 games. That's a defense, folks. And that's going to be a defense that has to stack up against a very good and a healthy offense in Oregon. I will give credit where credit is due, guys. But this team in Indiana continues to get overlooked, continues by the national media to continue to say, when is the bubble going to burst? To the point now where it almost feels like they want the bubble to burst. They're expecting the bubble to burst. But they don't know how strong Cignetti is, and that guy doesn't flinch. There's no panic on the Indiana sidelines. There is zero panic. There's going to be moments where you'd think they would panic, but they act like they've been there before, which they have not. But this team is a team of destiny.
Now, Druzy, we're not going to try to turn this into one of those ESPN shows, major media conglomerates where they just try to get 2 guys to argue on the air for 30 minutes. But can you just, for a moment, convince me that Oregon is going to win this football game, and not only win it, but win it convincingly enough for it to be a major setback to the University of Indiana football program? Convince me.
Can I do that without Irby driving back out here and taking a whooping to me or something like that if I accidentally pick against Indiana? I mean, it's going to be an uphill battle for Oregon, but Dante Moore is a perfectly capable quarterback. I mean, these are the likely number 1 and number 2 picks, right, come April. So Dante Moore certainly has the ability. Dilly, you talked about it last episode, and we referenced it here again today. Oregon is as healthy as they've been all year. I think, if anything, what they have to do, establish the run with Noah Whittingham, so that gives Dante Moore a little bit more flexibility with a run-pass option. And they need to come up with big plays, which Oregon can come up with big plays. That's kind of what they're built on. Look at the Miami Ohio State game. Interception return for a touchdown changed the whole dynamic of that game. Hope for something like that to happen, and game on, maybe Indiana starts to sweat it out a little bit. But agree with Herbs on a lot of the fronts there. Dilly, I don't know if we're going to get into official picks right now, and if you want me to make that pick, but that's how I think Oregon stays around and maybe wins the game, right? Make it close into the 4th quarter, make Indiana sweat it out, which they just haven't had to do a lot because they're blowing people out.
Couple factors here, Druzy. Thank you for the effort. That was extremely unconvincing. It was not convincing that Oregon is going to take it to Indiana and burst the bubble and wipe them off the map. I'm actually less convinced than when we started. Obviously, you reference make Indiana sweat. Cignetti, not only does he not sweat, he doesn't allow his team to sweat, so that's a total non-factor. Not to, this isn't the beat up on Druzy thing. Now, Herbs, does Dante Moore and the refurbished receiving core, is there anything in Oregon that gives you a little pause?
I'll be honest, there's not, and here's why. And really, this is based on fact. Guys, they played them already. You should look back to the game on October 10th, October 11th, and what did Indiana do to win that game? Druzy, to your point, you're calling for turnovers and pick sixes. That happened to Indiana in the first game, I believe. I believe they threw an interception and Oregon returned it. That was their offense in that game, I believe. But there's a reason why Indiana is here. Yes, they can play offense, but that defense in the first meeting took Dante Moore and made him pedestrian. He threw 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown, threw for 186 yards. That's not enough. Fernando Mendoza, and this tells you how good that the Indiana offense is, didn't have a great game, but didn't need to have a great game. He had 215 yards rushing with a touchdown. Roman Hemby, Indiana's running back, had 2 touchdowns with 70 yards. And Elijah Surratt had basically half of the, more than 3/4 of the yards. He had 121, 8 catches and a tutty. So the offense is always going to be there for Indiana, but it doesn't have to be gaudy numbers, right, for them to win because the defense is so good. And that, to your question, Dilly, is why I don't have any concerns. Signetti and the boys don't have any concerns. But what I can tell you is they will not overlook an Oregon team. They respect that Oregon team. And quite frankly, is as high as I can be on Indiana, Oregon deserves the respect. They've gotten here for a reason. Have they played a little bit suspectly throughout the season? Yes. And I suspect that there will be some pressure on the quarterback for Oregon that's going to cause some turnovers and ultimately will lead to the demise of Oregon and Indiana. And we should set up, I'll be honest, I'd love to see a Miami versus Indiana final. That would be great. See a little Michael Irvin on the sidelines trying to take the belt off against Signetti and the boys. Because I'll be honest, Signetti might be over there taking his belt off by the end of the game.
I will confirm Oregon did have a pick 6 in the fourth quarter to actually tie the game at 20. And Signetti, Indiana Hoosiers, zero sweat at that point, and they just put 10 on the board and walked away with it. Druzy, I won't put you on, in an impossible spot again here. That was a little bit of a gimmick if we, in the business. That was in the script. But what is your actual, prediction on how you see this game playing out and, final score and spread pick?
Yeah, I don't have Indiana winning by 55 like Herbs, but I do like Indiana to win. I mean, they like we said last week, I feel like they're the better team. And because they have balance, I feel like they're so hard to stop. Last game against Alabama, I think Fernando Mendoza was 14 of 16. I would call that efficient, right around 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Irby already brought up Roman Hemby and Kalen Black, almost 100 yards each. I mean, they had virtually a perfect split offensively, so they're very hard to make one-dimensional. They got the quarterback. They got playmakers. Their defense, which we talked about last episode, is the real deal. Dante Moore didn't play very good in their first meeting. I suspect he plays a little bit better. If I pick an Indiana, and if 3.5 gets a little squirrely, but if I had to, I would still give the 3.5 with Indiana. Score, Dilly, maybe something like a 28-21, 28-20, somewhere in there, probably similar to what they had last time. Just because I think Oregon will have a little bit of pride in this one and keep it close and think about the revenge factor in this one, but I still like Indiana.
Irby, give us your prediction. Game flow, final score.
It's easy. Here's the deal, guys. This is a sleeper. I'd take half of what you won last week in your 401k takeout, put it all on the house. I'd take half of what your winnings were, deposit the other half into the rest of your 401k. So you're up already. Let's double that money. Let's lay the 3.5 because that's a joke. The Indiana Hoosiers are going to win by 10-14. And that's because Signetti just looks over at the Oregon Ducks and is like, what are you wearing? Why are you here? I'm going to go to the championship. We'll see you later. Look me up. It's pretty simple.
So,
Google me.
Indiana not falling for shiny helmets or lime green or duck uniforms, anything Oregon rolls out. I do think at multiple points in the game, it will be tight. And I just think, kind of like we talked with Ole Miss, had multiple responses. I think Indiana will just have a response to any pressure they get from Oregon, whether they get down early, first give up a first drive score, be down a little bit. I think it's just too much to ask another team playing against Indiana at this point to continually beat them or get a lead. Beat them is, again, too strong of a term, but get a lead and hold it or come back and regain the lead if you're down. I just think Indiana keeps responding. They're so level-headed, and I don't think the moment's too big for them. It's hard to not just pick Indiana. Even, Druzy mentioned 3.5 points is kind of squirrely. That it's a wrong way hook on a key number. So, give a little caution there. I'd say just, regular loan type of bet. Maybe 5 units of whatever your normal gambling is, and lay the 3.5 and enjoy the game. That is Friday, correct? Yes, that's the Friday game.
That's the Friday game. Yep.
What kind of dominance does it take? Is it going to take for you two jokers to just jump on the bandwagon? There's plenty of room. I mean, these guys just blow them out by 34. They got no credit. I mean, I saw every Alabama fan in the country, which is basically the entire country, saying that, yeah, come and get some of that from Alabama. Here we go, roll tide, blah, blah, blah. That's what I say.
10 units? 10 unit bet? Not strong enough? It's nobody in history recommends betting 10 units.
10 units?
You said that after you said, I agree with that. 3.5 gets a little squirrely. Not in this game. There's no squirrely at 3.5. Lay the 3.5. That's a third of what they're going to win by. A quarter of what they're going to win by. That's like sleeping stuff. I'll go to sleep in the fourth quarter, and I'll wake up, and I knew what's going to happen when I wake up. Forget about it.
Indiana heading to the championship game.
I will say real quick, doesn't it feel too like this feels like it's just destiny for Indiana? Like, I don't know. That's what I feel like. If this feels like a 50-year middle finger from Indiana to the rest of like Miami, Ohio State, Alabama, we're just going to run the gauntlet against all the blue bloods. We'll beat Oregon twice. We'll beat Penn State. Here you go. This is our calling. It feels like there's a little bit of that there.
There has to be that. There's got to be like 7 bulletin boards in that locker room, man, full of shit, because nobody gives them a chance except for yours truly. Like, this is not even a game. I mean, Oregon's a good team, but it's not going to be close, guys. Like, this is just a dominant team this year, and I want what kind of stinks for Indiana, and what's going to stink for me is if they do and they do lose. But I hope people come at me hard. But here's what sucks for Indiana is they haven't really. Have you ever seen an undefeated team with such little hype? Like, they're not getting any credit at all, and we're in the semifinals of the college football playoffs, and they don't have any. Everybody's still second guessing them. 3.5 points, guys. Come on, they beat them by 10 in the regular season at Eugene. It's a neutral site. Give them a little credit. What's going on?
I will say, I think we can safely say, before we get to some joint middle fingers at the NCAA, I think we can safely say, if Indiana finishes this off, which I would suggest Irby believes they will, convincingly this week and whenever the hell the championship game is, I'm sure it's another weirdly lengthed break before that game, we may end up looking back on it and giving them the credit they deserve as the greatest football season of all time, because no other team, obviously there's been undefeated teams, but they've never had to go through a gauntlet through super conferences, conference title games, and then a college football playoff. I mean, it's 4 or 5 in a row against the elite teams in all of college football, elite super teams with unlimited NIL money and transfer portal stuff. That's different than, Notre Dame and Miami happening to play in a Sugar Bowl, or Florida State, whoever. I forget all the old bowl games where you didn't ever actually know who the national championship was. NIL and transfers and that stuff, that's what I'm segueing into on the middle fingers to the NCAA. Getting back to Ole Miss a little bit, does anybody actually know? And I stopped looking into it because nobody really knows. What is the deal with the coordinators if Ole Miss advances? Because LSU, they have an obligation to recruit during this transfer portal window, which I believe ends before the championship game, doesn't it?
They flew back like this week. They left practice this week to fly to Baton Rouge to do recruiting, and then they flew back to Ole Miss. I don't know that they know the answer to that, Dilly. I think this is such a bizarre thing that Ole Miss basically told Lane Kiffin, we don't want you back. Go to LSU if that's what you want to do. And then keeping, like, obviously very highly talented, highly sought after, very capable coordinators, it just feels like the whole thing is is just bizarre, right?
And there has to be backup players on all these teams, if not some of the top level players that are in the transfer portal and considering other teams at this point, and they have to make a decision before a championship game. Potentially, I mean ends before the championship game. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that the NCAA needs to change that. The NCAA should never have opened the transfer portal during the college football playoff because how many players want to go to these schools that are still playing? Great. I guess it's great so you can bring these recruits if you actually are Oregon, Indiana, or Miami, when you have a full coaching staff who's focused on your university. But like you said, to that point, Dilly, that's why I believe Ole Miss's bubble is going to burst here because it's just too much influx. There's just too much question. There's got to be 7 or 8 players on Ole Miss who are poised to go to LSU. I guarantee it. They're following their coach, regardless of how good they are this year.
There's some that may do that, Herbs. What I will say is I think Chambliss has already applied for like a 6th year and wants to stay at Ole Miss. And I want to say there is another one that wants to stay at Ole Miss, which is just interesting that you would think there would be a bigger, maybe a more significant parade of players going to LSU. But it's just the whole thing. It's just the timing is off. The whole feel of it is off. Now you guys got me second guessing my Ole Miss pick, but I'm sticking with it.
I had a great article that was updating with all the transfer portal stuff, but it actually stopped updating for these games, for these Final Four games. So I don't have the up-to-date information on the actual players that are. I thought an Ole Miss backup quarterback was maybe in the portal, and maybe a secondary player. But in any case,
because Austin Simmons, I think, Dilly, he was the starter to begin the year. Like a very highly sought after player. I believe he's in the portal. Might have been the one you were thinking about.
You got to watch yourself though as a player, guys. The way the transfer portal, you have to, like, once you go in, a lot of universities, you don't come back. Like, there's no coming back unless unless there's a small percentage of players can do that. But once you are no longer loyal to that, and I think there's a lot of paperwork that goes into, at least a document that goes into that. I am now going into the transfer portal. You can test the transfer portal, but I'll tell you right now from firsthand knowledge, you are ostracized from the current university that you're at. You're basically dead to them. You don't do anything more. And these players don't want to do that to themselves nor their teammates. So I think there's a lot of kids that are waiting. Let's see what happens. And maybe it's worth me sticking around.
I can say, it's unique circumstances where the team is not, cutting off a player. Coy Parrish, pretty studly defensive back for the Minnesota Gophers, entered the portal window, but kind of put out a state. He's kind of said he's very open to returning Minnesota, but felt he had a open. I don't know if he's going second level chess and just saying. And I'm surprised we may see more of this, where guys that don't necessarily want to leave, they almost have an obligation to enter in order to accrue more NIL money from their existing university. Why wouldn't you? And so I don't know if that's exactly what he's doing. He's a homegrown Minnesota kid. But a guy like that who has a chance to go to almost guaranteed playoff team school for a very lucrative offer, it's almost silly to expect these kids to not, at some point, just all enter the transfer portal, and you just got to recruit your own players back.
That's what it feels like. Hard to blame him for doing it, right? I mean, I'd love if it came back, Dilly, just because he's a hometown guy, but can you blame him? I can't blame him. And the whole thing is just messy. Like, isn't there, I don't know the exact players, but I think Georgia has like 2 players that one player is suing Georgia, and then Georgia is actually suing a player because of the whole, like, feel like they should return the money type thing. It's just the whole thing, right? The whole thing is backwards. The timing is backwards. Feels like there's got to be some more guardrails, but
hopefully we're doing an episode in February or March, and I mean, we'll get into college basketball season here eventually, and it's the same crap there. I mean, you don't even know who's on your teams anymore. You don't recognize them. But yeah, hopefully, we don't, who even runs the NCAA? We could spend we could put out 50 hours of content and never really get to the bottom of anything because you don't even know who's in charge. Because at any point in the game, the super conferences just might say, nah. NCAA, nah.
Who needs you? Yep.
Yeah, we don't need you. I mean, they really don't. That's the crazy part is they don't really need the NCAA. So what are they even doing other than screwing things up?
To answer your question, Dilly, the inmates run the asylum there. It's the student athletes that are running the NCAA right now. The NCAA has lost all control.
This is a college football show or a college football episode. I think again, this could be an ongoing thing for a while. We're going to do another hat tip to the River Falls Falcons for winning the championship. They deserve a full complement of time and recap. And we're not going to force it in here at the end of the Division I college football playoff episode, but hat tip to them. We're going to circle back to NFL news. We got more coaches fired, more coaches moving. We'll start to get coaches moving news. And then, I think eventually, time permitting, we might have to revisit some of our playoff predictions as we get more information in late in the week. We did a little behind the curtain here, Druzy, did a little trickeration in the last, yet to be posted playoff preview episode. Over the course of 3 minutes, I think I changed one of my picks 3 times. It's just, you got to trick the listeners into continuing to listen. You can't just hear the first call, place your bet, and then close the browser. You got to listen the whole show. Get all the info. Irby, are you flipping on your Indiana pick?
No, man. Come on. You crazy?
See you soon. No one's saying goodbye?
Later.
Oh, thanks for having me, fellas.
Don't disappear immediately. All right, got to find the disconnect. See ya.